So I got myself the A7 IV as a late birthday present. And yes, today, December 7th, is my birthday. And today we're going to be going over the 3 features that I'm really excited about this camera that no one seems to be talking about. And first of all, these are not features that are new with the A7 IV. But if you're a user of the A7 III or the A7R III, these are going to be new too. So let's talk about those today. Now, the first thing I'm very excited about is something that they added with the A7R IV in secret. This is not something, people talked about that much, but something I've been well aware of and I actually made a video about it before, which is called focus priority. Now, for those people who don't know what focus priority is, I don't blame you, because this is something that only really affects studio photographers. Now, let me explain to you like this. Now, if you're a Sony shooter, if you ever struggle with using flashes where like the camera's autofocus just becomes unusable, this is the reason why. Now, with these older cameras, I think pretty much any camera that came out before the R4, so like the A7R III, A7 III, or any of those older cameras, the weird thing about those cameras is that if you're using single point autofocus, if you're using AFS, what the camera does is that it keeps the aperture wide open to get the initial focus and then it locks in. So that works great. But if you try to use continuous autofocus with those cameras, what it does is that it keeps the aperture open to get that initial focus, and then it closes down the aperture and then tries to focus anyways. Now, if you're shooting in a bright room with the aperture wide open, then it doesn't really matter. But let's just say you're trying to shoot inside of a dim lit studio with the aperture closed down at f8 or f11 with strobes so you don't have continuous light going on, then the camera pretty much can't autofocus. Now, this isn't such a big issue with the A7 III because the A7 III has... Oh my god, I almost destroyed my camera. But again, this isn't a huge issue with the A7 III because the A7 III has such good autofocus that pretty much even though it's in a really hard situation to focus, since the camera has such good autofocus, it can actually focus through it. But with the A7R III, it's not as strong as the A7 III or any of the older cameras. They're not strong enough, so if you try to use continuous autofocus with those cameras, they struggle a lot. So what focus priority does is that it pretty much, during continuous autofocus, it keeps the aperture wide open. Now, this is something that they could have just easily added through firmware to all their cameras, but of course Sony, oh, you want a small firmware upgrade that's going to make your camera a lot better, you got to buy our newest, greatest camera. So that is a big thing that's going to help any studio photographer. If you're doing headshots, you're doing fashion, where you're using flashes instead of continuous lights, it makes a huge difference in your autofocus. But again, if you can just use single point autofocus and that works perfectly fine. But if you want to use continuous autofocus, then using the focus priority mode is going to help a lot with your photography. But it's going to help me a lot when I'm shooting inside of studios, because studios in general, you don't have that much light going on because you don't want any light pollution when you're using your strobes. So this is something that's going to be super helpful and I'm very excited about it. Alright, the second thing they added, which is something they also added with the A7R IV, which really makes me regret getting the R3, because I actually got the A7R III like a couple of months before they announced the R4. So at first I didn't really care about it because I was like, oh, I don't need 60 megapixel, who cares? But now like they had a bunch of different technology stuff. But let's get into the second stuff, which is going to be the upgraded hot shoe on the A7R IV. Now, the upgraded hot shoe in the A7R IV and also A7S III and also A1 also has the upgraded hot shoe. It allows you to pretty much get better audio if you're using any of Sony's shotgun mics, so you can just adapt onto the A7R IV. And there's also an XLR adapter that you can adapt to the A7, R4, S3, A1, and the upcoming A7 IV that, allows you to get both digital and analog audio from it. Now, with the older cameras, you can still use these accessories, but there's limitations with it. The audio is usually noisy, it's lower quality if you use it, you can't change any of the audio settings on the camera. Now, I don't know how big of a difference there is, but from what I read online, there is a difference between these, two different hot shoes. So that's something I'm very excited to test out, because I know that when I use my wireless lavalier mics through the hot shoe adapter, the audio ends up being a lot noisier than if I were to, just use an XLR adapter or if I just record it externally. So that's something that I'm very excited to try out to see how the audio is going to sound. And then also, when you plug in the audio adapters to the hot shoe on these older cameras, it disables the audio menu, so you cannot make any changes to the audio. So I'm gonna be doing a lot of testing when the A7 IV comes out to see how the audio quality improves with the new hot shoe on these newer cameras. Or the third and the final thing I'm very excited about with the A7 IV is gonna be the gyroscope in the camera. Now Sony likes to pretend like they have stabilization in their cameras, and it is not true, because I shoot with both the A7RIII and the original A7 cameras, and the original A7 camera does not have any stabilization on it. But the A7RIII supposedly has like 5 stops of stabilization, but I honestly don't see any difference when I shoot photography, and even in video I don't really see that much difference between those two cameras. You know, they're both just end up being very shaky footage with these cameras. But with the help of the gyroscope, if you're shooting video, you can get like super smooth, almost gimbal like video with the A7 IV because of the gyroscope data on it. Now from what I've seen, I actually never used it myself. I just seen, you know, other YouTubers talk about it, and like they show like a shaky footage and then you put it through Callus browse, and then like the footage just becomes like beautifully smooth. But things that it takes a while for it to do that, so it does add a lot of time to your post-processing. Once if I'm doing like a professional gig where I'm like shooting like a music video or something, if I just need to get like a quick shot or something, besides setting up a gimbal, being able to just use the gyroscope would be amazing, you know. First of all, bringing gimbals along, you know, you have to bring this whole another thing. You have to bring it with you. That's another thing you have to charge, and you have to remember to bring, and they're big, bulky. You have to calibrate it. You can't use certain lenses with it. It's just a pain in the ass to use gimbals, but just not having to worry about using a gimbal. Just use your camera and then use the Callus browse to get some smooth footage out of it. That's amazing to me. So that's the most thing I'm excited about with the A7 IV, is that I just don't have to use a gimbal with that camera. But first of all, of course, once I get the camera, then I'm gonna do a lot of tests with it, see how it actually works with that camera. But if it works as well as I'm seeing it online, then screw it, I'm never using gimbals ever again, pretty much. But before I end the video, I do want to give some honorable mentions. First of all, they are fixing these like floppy, I don't know what these are called, but like where you like pretty much have the camera straps attached. Like these things right there, they're less floppy, so they don't make these noises when you're using the camera. That's great. They're also getting rid of these flippy doors. These doors are terrible. As you can see, they're just, you know, I don't know, they just feel like cheap plastic and they just get in the way. It also feels like they're gonna fall off. Surprisingly, in the past 3 or so years that I've been using this camera, they haven't broken off yet, which I'm very surprised at. And also they're giving us a full HDMI port, which I love, because screw any other type of HDMI that isn't full, especially this, I believe it's a micro HDMI on the A7R3. It's terrible. It's terrible to use. I hate them. You know, look how tiny they're. They always come off when you're using them. You have to bring another type of HDMI cable. I actually usually just get some micro HDMI adapters, so I have to buy a whole nother HDMI cable, but they're just annoying to use. But anyways guys, I think that's gonna be it for this video. Thanks for watching, and make sure to write in the comment section, you know, what are you excited about for the A7 IV, if you're getting it or not, or is there any features that they haven't added to the camera. So let me know about all that in the comment section, and I'll try to reply to as many as I can. But anyways guys, thanks for watching this video. I'm gonna be making more A7 IV videos since you guys seem to be liking those videos, and once we get the A7 IV, dude, my channel is just gonna be A7 IV videos pretty much till like I get 0 views again. But anyways guys, thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.